Hello everybody, Kevin Markwick here again on the sound of the Picture House in Uckfield. This is our soundtracks sort of a strand where we talk about film music. No Phil Lott with us this week, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, ladies and gents. We didn't record this at a Los Angeles friendly time. However, I had a really lovely time talking to Terry Davies. And if anyone knows about music, it's Terry. Some of you may be familiar with Terry. He accompanied several silent movies now at the Picture House. Hunchback of Notre Dame. We had a great Halloween evening with Phantom of the Opera. And the hilarious Buster Keaton film, The General. Good nights, all of them. Anyway, we've decided, of course, that picking your favourite film scores and even limiting them to 10, that's easy for you to say, is an almost impossible task. Anyway, Terry came up with a great list of music for us to play and talk about. Terry started his professional composing at the National Theatre, where he's been an experienced musical director and orchestrator. He worked for 12 years, actually, with many leading actors and directors. Among his compositions for the National Theatre are The Voisey Inheritance, Scenes from the Big Picture, The Misanthrope, The Festival of New Plays. He also composed for the Nationals The Rise and Fall of Little Voice, developing vocal routines with Jane Horrocks and Sam Mendes. Many other compositions for theatre include The Winter's Tale at the Crucible Sheffield, The Way of the World for Chichester Festival Theatre, Arthur and George for Birmingham Rep, Dealer's Choice at the Menier Chocolate Factory, and Trafalgar Studios' Days of Wine and Roses at the Donmar Warehouse. He also composed for a large number of Shakespeare productions at the RSC and Regent's Park Open Air Theatre. Terry also wrote songs for the RSC's production of Alice in Wonderland. He's written 2 musicals, The Birds, commissioned by the Istanbul City Theatre, which ran for 4 years, and Kess the Musical for the Octagon Theatre Bolton, and revived at York's Theatre Royal. He's an associate artist of Matthew Bourne's company New Adventures and has written 5 of Matthew's dance scores: The Carman, Play Without Words, Edward Scissorhands, Dorian Gray, and The Lord of the Flies. In the recording studio, Terry's conducted or orchestrated the music for about 70 feature films. Among these are Youth, Mr. Turner, Stonehurst Asylum, W.E., The King's Speech, Another Year, The Illusionist, Brideshead Revisited, Happy-Go-Lucky, and Brick Lane. Honestly, this just goes on and on. He's so clever. Anyway, this is our chat. I hope you enjoy it. I certainly did. And there's some great music and some great insight. What I'm thinking, because the first one on your list really intrigued me. Or I've actually, to be fair, to say it's Terry's list is a bit. It is Terry's list, but I've put them in this order, so yeah, I don't know. Fine. Is that okay? Yeah, of course. All right, okay. Is The Bells of St. Trinian's, which is fascinating. Malcolm Arnold.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made you alight on that one?
Oh, he was a bit of a star, Arnold, I think, really. And he in the concert hall and all of that, he was his own man, and sort of drove that sort of path between the kind of the popular orchestral light music British Brigade and sort of serious, insightful classical stuff in the concert hall. But he did write some great film scores, and Bridge Over the River Kwai comes to mind. Mm-hmm. The Bells of St. Trinian I just thought it was, I think a lot of the ones that I chose, like, it's not just, hopefully the music is worth some time listening on its own, but they kind of have an approach to their films that is interesting as a composer. Like you're trying to say something beyond what's on the screen. Mm-hmm. And I just thought Centurions, it just made me laugh. And I hate music that sets out to be funny because it never works. But the Bells of Centurions is just great because it is the school band playing that tune, and it just made
Right.
me laugh the minute I became aware of it. So I think it's good music, and it's sort of so full of fun and life, and so I love it.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we didn't have a massive raft of composers in British cinema early on, did we? It wasn't a thing. I mean, Bells and Centurions is not particularly early, but you know, it took a while for British film composers to materialise.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right. Arnold was he kept his own. He was his own man basically,
Yes, yeah,
and I kind of like that. And also he had the authority. I think people let him have some space.
yeah. But it's kind of interesting that the crossover was acceptable, certainly in British cinema. You know, Arnold and William Walton and these people. The crossover between what was considered classical music and film music was quite acceptable, whereas in the US, it seemed to me that those great composers like Korngold and Steiner and even Bernard Herrmann, those two things didn't seem to people didn't perceive that those two things crossed over in the same way.
No, I think that is right. I think there is a certain sniffiness on both sides of the Atlantic, though, or was more
Right.
than now. Don't you think about
Now there
film,
is
film
definitely,
commentators?
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Although, I mean, we would talking. I mean, because film scores now have, we're getting some quite extraordinary stuff coming out. You know, like the Johan Johansson stuff, and I always trip up on this with Hilda. Oh, it's terrible. Yes, I mean, who I believe was a protege of Johansson's, but film scores are really broadening out now. It seems to me, or maybe that's a naive thing to say. I don't know.
I think that's right. I think the barriers are falling on all sides, aren't they?
So he's having an awful lot of fun there, isn't he? That's what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great. There's a particular thing you can when you know. I think there's something you can sort of smell in any kind of art form. You know, that I reckon it's just my theory that
Right.
really good, very able artists, absolutely on the top of their game, having fun. You kind of know it, and it's just so enticing. You know, whatever the art form actually.
Yeah, and it fits I mean, my memories of them are seeing them on a Saturday afternoon in my cinema, or our cinema as it was at the time.
Yeah.
And they were kind of such tremendous fun. George Cole as the Spiv and Alistair Sim. It never struck me as odd that it was a bloke playing the headmaster.
No, normally.
It was only some years later, you know. I went, hang on a minute, that's a bloke. Which is kind of funny.
Well, he just does it so fantastically, doesn't he? He makes no apology and he just plays the fun.
Yeah, I wonder if they played in the rest of the world, those films. I don't know. They seem peculiarly British to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, and actually more, I mean, as much as people fondly remember Carry On movies, although I think we're beginning to distance ourselves ever so slightly from them now. They don't have that kind of snarf about them, do they? The Centurions movies in the same way.
They feel more generous to me. I don't know.
Yeah. But
I
it was,
love it. I
yeah.
love it.
I love the old, and all the actors, all the character actors. You'd see a Richard Wattis or all the same faces over and over again.
Of course.
So next, on this brilliant list it is a great list. We're going to go to Citizen Kane, the prelude from Citizen Kane. So, but the great Bernard Herrmann, who we mentioned a moment ago. But what I'm interested in is, I was reading about how you'd used Bernard Herrmann music in your score. We call it a score.
Yeah.
For the Red Shoes for Matthew Bourne, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Did he come up with I want Bernard Herrmann music, or did he come?
Yeah, we kind of have a sort of intermittent, ongoing conversation in general about things, Matthew and I, and
Right.
we've been working together a very long time now. But he's always had a penchant for Bernard Herrmann, which I share. And we nearly did it in a different project, in fact, but it's just such great music. And so that came from Matthew, really. And he also decided that he wanted to use just the earliest scores and not mostly not the familiar ones, not the Hitchcock scores.
Right.
I just think it was a good call. Actually, apart from anything else, there is all kind of practical stuff about rights and all of that. If you used to say take one scene, one piece from 20 different films, it's going to drive some poor contractual person completely bonkers.
Absolutely crazy.
So
yeah.
I think we in the end went down to about 5 or 6 films only, of which Citizen Kane was one.
And of course, I suppose, not to diminish the scores before the Hitchcock ones, but the Hitchcock ones are the most familiar, aren't they? And they're the ones that the audience are going to go, hang on a minute, that sounds. I know what that is.
Absolutely, and had real influence. I mean, Herrmann has always been loved by other composers.
Yes.
He
is. Yeah.
That's the other thing to remember about Citizen Kane. I mean, it's just dazzling in its virtuosity, actually, and he's just so varied. You could pick any 1 minute of the score of a long score, and you would have a great piece of music, and all very, very different.
Yes.
Yeah, somehow all of a whole. But he wrote it. The thing that I think sets it apart for me is that, like Orson Welles, they were very, very young, and and this is their first Hollywood film, both of them, and they were just having a good time. That actually, Citizen Kane, of that thing I was saying about people at the top of their game having fun. That was never more true than Citizen Kane. I'd say.
And they weren't restrained by what was expected of them either, were they? That was the thing.
But I think somehow they wanted Wells so much, and he was so apparently indifferent to it because he had so much going on in New York, that they just wanted him at all costs. He was the wunderkind, and they just said, okay, yeah, of course we won't have any editorial control. And as I remember reading that the publicity department weren't allowed to see the film until it was finished.
It's quite possible. Did you see Mank? Did you get around to seeing that?
I did.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, a lot of people didn't, but I quite liked it.
Well, I liked it medium. Yeah, I liked it medium.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not super accurate, but I don't care. I quite like that period.
Yeah, certainly worth a good look.
But it seemed like I was just fascinated by the choice to do that with the Red Shoes, the ballet, because it actually has a ballet sequence, or music. There's music written for a ballet in the Red Shoes film, isn't there?
There is a sort of, something like that, exactly. And there's but it's the challenge for us is in a show like that is to somehow make it our own, to be totally true to Herrmann, but to, with the other scores, make it into one complete unified whole that makes sense on its own terms. Yes. And so that's always the technical challenge from a music point of view.
Okay, well, I'm going to play this prelude, which is the bit at the beginning.
Yeah, very, very. It's worth saying that the orchestration of this is really peculiar, very outrageous. There's like loads and loads of contrabassoons and like 4 or 5 bassoons, and very low instruments. It's really extraordinary choice of orchestration. Very, again, quite daring, I'd say.
Yeah, well, which the film, of course, was in the year that it was made.
Yeah.
But again, it always fascinates me that the two are now inseparable. Yet presumably Herman put this music on after he saw the images, which is,
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think he was on set every day though.
was
I
he?
think I think he was closely involved. Yeah, I think he was around a lot, and I think had more input because they were close collaborators in New York. So I think he was very much trusted.
So he
So
wrote music for the radio stuff, presumably then, Herman.
yeah, he did. He did.
Right,
Yeah, he was at actually he was at the radio station when Wells went in there, and so that's when they met at the radio.
right. So the next one on the list is actually also one of my absolute favourites, Alex North's music from A Streetcar Named Desire,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, apart from anything else, it's a fine example of jazz, is it not?
Absolutely, and you know, one of the first in film, the most effective first, you know, early jazz score, I'd say. Really, it's fantastic.
And sets the
And
mood instantly.
freshness. It gave it its freshness and its sort of sexuality that you know of Brando and all of that. It's all in the music. I think it's great.
Well, it is. There's a famous story, isn't there, about the scene where, you know, when Stella goes upstairs to be away from Stanley because he's being brutish and horrible like Stanley is. And then he's doing that famous, you know, Stella. I won't do my Marlon Brando. It never goes well. Stella. He's doing that Stella, isn't he? And he's shouting up at her, and she comes down the stairs slowly and then embraces him in quite a, you know, provocative way.
Yeah.
And the music that North originally put on that so heightened the sexual tension in it the censors wouldn't have it. They said, no, you've got to change the music because it's just too incendiary. And and unfortunately, was it Columbia? Is it a Columbia film? I think it was. Had to take the piece of music that North had written off that particular part of the film.
That's fantastic. It's censoring music for being too sexual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about I'm a big fan of what's his name? Oh, for God's sake, Kevin, the author of the play,
Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee Williams. Thank you. This is happening more and more. It's age, Big fan of Tennessee Williams, film doesn't always capture it as well as it could be captured. I always think. I mean, as good as those Cat on a Hot Tin Roof on stage is always far more effective. And as much as I love the film version, it doesn't have that sort of seething quality that Tennessee Williams has.
That's right, Kevin. And also, it's worth saying that Brando came to prominence through playing it on Broadway before the film, so he knew it. He was it.
Yes.
And so he brought all of that from the stage.
Yes.
That's a big part of its power, I think.
But as soon as it starts, the music I'm gonna play, the streetcar track, you're in the hot, sultry New Orleans atmosphere, aren't you? Yeah, that's just wonderful, isn't it?
It is. That's great.
But Alex North actually also did two of my other most favourite scores, which are Spartacus and which I suppose are quite different, aren't they? Because where did he come from? North, I believe he was a jazz. He was.
Yeah. He was one of the few Americans, I think, wasn't he? Not the non-Europeans.
Yes, actually, at the time, yes, you're absolutely right. And so Spartacus and Cleopatra.
And Herman was another, of course.
Yeah. Sorry, who was?
Herman was the other.
Yes. But I think Alex North is is he underrated? Is he one we hear much now? Difficult to say. I don't know.
I don't know. I think to most people, except who don't share this strange
Yeah.
enthusiasm that we have, I think all these names are complete mystery.
That's interesting, isn't it? No, that's a really I suppose this is a thing I talk about quite a lot, or I bring up quite a lot because I'm turning into my dad and I repeat myself, which is that film scores were the only way to own any part of the film. Certainly when you and I were growing up, I would imagine.
Sure.
You know, that you couldn't have it on VHS or video or DVD. The only way to have any part of the film and to replay it was to have the score. And even then, scores weren't readily available in the same way that they are now. And but what I'm fascinated about, what I've always been fascinated, is this idea that the film score albums I bought were, I think actually we've discussed this before, were they were like a trot through the score. Now you get an album and it's every 1.5 minute cue, every 30-second cue, every cue that's in the film is on the soundtrack album.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Close Encounters album I bought in 1977 was a sort of almost like a Close Encounters suite from, you know, and it gave you the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Which seems a shame sometimes, because I'm not as hardcore that I want every last 30 seconds of the score.
I'm with you. I mean, when we've done soundtrack albums, I mean, you want it to be a good listening experience, don't you? I'm much more interested in that than the authenticity to the actual film, which is something slightly different to the scoring itself. I think, you know, it might not necessarily be exactly what was planned by the composer. So I'm with you. I'd rather have a fulfilling listen.
But we used to get that a lot. I'm sure we did. The So and So suite. You know, Richard Rodney Bennett used to do a lot of that, didn't he? You know, and the composers we mentioned, like Walton and you know,
definitely
Arnold.
Sure. Herman did that as well, to some extent. You were saying the other day, actually, I listened to your conversation with Phil Lott, and which was great. And you were talking at one time, you were talking about the kind of the budget Jeff Love versions.
Oh yeah.
Well, I used to make those.
Oh, you did? Oh, fantastic!
When I was very young, I used to be my degree was in music and sound recording, Surrey University, and I was for about a year a sound engineer.
Wow!
And we used to, in the studio, a chapel in Bond Street doesn't exist anymore. And I was very much a junior member of that team. But we used to record those Jeff Love albums, you know, like one every half an hour.
Yeah, and all on the twirly rack in Woolworths, weren't they?
Yeah, sorry, exactly. You know, for sort of, you know, £2.
They weren't in the main section where you had to flip through them like you did in record shops. They were in the twirly thing with you pushed around with the Top of the Pops albums.
Yeah, that's right. I can remember buying one of those versions of Mary Poppins and for an affordable amount, and thinking, and then being really, really disappointed to discover it was all cover versions by singers I'd never heard of.
But I think
wildly.
We were saying on that when Phil and I were talking about it, that actually the one I had the big terror movie themes and the big war movie themes. And actually, they were mostly pretty accurate, actually, those. They weren't too bad at all. Some of them were a bit iffy. But the one we were talking about was Jaws. How you can't get Jaws right unless you're John Williams conducting Jaws. Somehow it just doesn't sound right, you know, which is kind of odd. Oh, that's fascinating. That's a while ago, Terry. They were made that was a while ago, Terry. They made those albums.
It's a fair cop,
So actually,
1 year.
Yeah, all right, okay, but a memorable one. How was Jeff? Was he?
He was nice. We were loads of fantastic. Vera Lynn, we used to do. Shirley Bassey, we used to do loads of them. It was really great. It was a good year, but absolutely naggering.
Right.
And I was 21, 22 at that time, and just thought. And I looked at that sort of haggard, divorced people 10 years older than me, and thought, do I really want to be one of those? I don't think so.
So they were on the MFP label, weren't they? Music for Pleasure.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Yeah, which presumably was a subsidiary of, I think, EMI or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it was. Yes.
So so moving along the list, the reason I've gone back to her in the list that you gave me that I've ordered, I've gone back to Herman and Taxi Driver because it somehow seems to echo Streetcar Named Desire in a way. I mean, you know, I know Herman's the master, but there are great similarities in that attempt to evoke the urban heat, if you like.
Absolutely. And Taxi Driver was a very late score for Herman. So, but yeah, just again that thing as we were talking about earlier, just that having one concept, one really fantastic notion of what the film is and what the score needs to do for the film. And I can remember just hearing the first 2 seconds of the score and thinking, wow, that is brilliant. Just because it says so much to me. I think we're looking at De Niro in his cab and at night with the big opening shot, as I remember.
Yeah, and it comes out of the haze coming up from the sidewalk, doesn't it? You know, you've got that steam because in New York, you get that weird steam coming from the heating system, don't you? I don't know. Does it still exist, that heating system? I guess it does. I don't know.
I think it does.
Yeah. I'm trying to find who. I was reading a book about this, and I was reading a book about Herman and Taxi Driver, and how, you know, because it was pretty much his last score, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Because Scorsese, who has a great understanding of the history of cinema, knew that, you know, to get yourself a Herman score. Oh, I know what it was. It was actually the editor of Brian De Palma's films. I can't remember his name, which is appalling. Just read his book, and how you had to treat Herman with kid gloves all the time. He was very prickly.
He was.
You know, and very. By the time he got to, it was because obviously De Palma being a big Hitchcock fan, would you say?
Yeah.
Copy? No, nothing. Obviously Herman was one of his heroes as well, and he wanted scores. I can't think of the film they were doing, but what did Herman do for De Palma? I can't think. Anyway, no. And yes, he was very difficult to deal with, apparently. Maybe that was age. He was ill. He couldn't see very well.
I think he was always difficult, actually.
Was he? Oh,
I think so. I think even young, he was quite tricky.
Right. But I think
I've read some of his writings, you know, and he's he was clearly, you know, setting himself up to, you know, to not be messed with.
Yeah, and he sort of didn't he? He did consider himself a genius, I think, which is fair enough. I'm just trying to find what Bernard Herrmann did for. I can't find it. I don't know. I think it was Obsession. It was a film, music by Bernard Herrmann. Yeah, Obsession, which I've not seen. So it sort of changes tack, doesn't it? It goes from that very kind of sinister thing to this really is it sleazy?
Yeah, it's just beautiful though, isn't it? It's a beautiful kind of ease to it. It's lovely.
But yeah, I believe he didn't survive quite long enough to hear it or see it in the film. Bernard Herrmann, I believe he died before the film was released. Yeah, 1975. He was 64 when he died.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So there was still a lot of scores technically in him, wasn't there?
Yeah, there were.
Goodness me, what a shame. So next on the list is Jerry Goldsmith's score for Planet of the Apes. Again, another groundbreaking score, was it at the time?
Yeah, I think so. I think yes, pretty much. There was just trying to think what Rosenthal was around at that time, was doing kind of similar things, but this is, I think, that of all the, in musical technical terms, this is a kind of 12-tone score, so-called. So that's like, it's that, which is a sort of system invented by Schoenberg. And nobody goes anywhere near it in film because it's just too constraining. And basically, you can't play, the basic rule, although, is that you can't play any note until all the other 11 have been played.
That's the rule, is it? In the 12 tone.
That's kind of serialism, the so-called, or the 12-note rule.
Wow.
And so the whole construction is like that. So it's kind of bonkers, but there's been some fantastic music, but it's very, very expressionistic and doesn't always work with film, and it's not flexible necessarily, except when you got a master dealing with it. And Goldsmith, who didn't write that stuff normally, or Rosenthal did more, but that Goldsmith decided it was the right vehicle for Planet of the Apes, being slightly otherworldly, and that's why it's so extreme and fantastic. I just really, really love this score. And when I heard it, it kind of struck me, like a thunderbolt. Really, it's just so incredible.
Yes, that's interesting because it there was no indication that score was coming from Jerry Goldsmith's previous work, was there?
Exactly. It was that conscious decision to do a serial score.
Right.
And also they let him do it, That's the other thing.
I mean, this was a big studio production, wasn't it? It was 20th Century Fox, and it was a big hit.
Heston. Yeah.
Charlton Heston put his vest on. I was obsessed with Planet of the Apes as a kid. It was a thing with me, Planet of the Apes. I absolutely adored it.
The final scene, the image on the beach at the end.
Damn you all to hell! You blew it up. I just try and erase the memory of the Tim Burton version, which was
I didn't go there actually.
No, you did. I like the new ones actually. The more recent ones. They're all right. But yeah, this music. This is a track. This particular cue is called "The Hunt," which I believe is presumably it's the music when Charlton Heston and the other astronauts come across. They see the humans being hunted by the apes. And
and they're amongst them. So
they're hunted. Yes.
They're sort of rounded up. It is a hunt of the humans.
Yes, and Taylor gets shot in the throat, which is why he can't talk. And I saw it too many times. So next up, John Williams, who again also turns up a lot in people's
Strangely.
lists. The theme from Schindler's List. Why particularly this John Williams score?
It's right. Okay. I mean, I really admire John Williams, right? So don't take this the wrong way.
No.
But I really like the fact there was no music in the first half of the film, and I just thought that was brilliant. You know, the first third of the film, there's absolutely nothing, no music at all, and it's
Is there not?
rawer and more painful because of it. And then when it starts into this theme with this sort of Jewish folk theme based thing, then it just breaks your heart because you've had nothing, and your release musically, and your emotional release is finally permitted, and we're inside the camp by now, and it breaks your heart, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, I did. You know,
I mean? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, and I hadn't thought until you just mentioned it now that there was no music in the first half of the picture at all. That I'd never noticed.
No, a long time, first third of the film.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing. It's all that emotional stuff, rounding up the ghettos, nothing. And then you're there, and then the music, then the tune starts. I haven't watched it for a while. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I
that's
haven't
what
seen
struck
it for a
me
while.
so
Because
powerfully.
though particularly those early scenes in Schindler, would be inappropriate to ladle music all over them, I guess.
Yes, well, certainly ladle it, yeah. But you know, most people would sort of go in there with a little bit of stuff, you know, but you don't need to be told what to feel in those scenes.
No.
And its restraint makes when it finally arrives, it's much more powerful, in my opinion. That's good composing, writing nothing.
Yes,
it really is.
Yes.
Good call.
And also lifted, and unusually for film scores, to have actually a sort of star performer in them as well. That's not a normal thing, is it? But Ishak Perlman's playing is extraordinary on that score. Next up on the list, now this is in many ways it's the opposite. On Golden Pond, Dave Grusin, which is you one may level the accusation of this is kind of syrup in a bottle, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, no, it's a syrupy film. I do agree. I just think the music is just so beautiful, really, and it's just the film is very hyper emotion. It does wear its emotions on its sleeve, and you're supposed to. It tells you exactly what to feel, and the music does that job as well. I just think it's really lovely. Lovely music, and it did fit the film. It was what they wanted, but yeah, and not saying it was the best film in the world.
No, I didn't mind the film at all. I was actually, I mean, it came out I'm going to say 80s, early 80s. So I wasn't, I wasn't old and warty at the time. I think it probably spoke more, didn't it, to an older generation at the time than it did to me. Not that it was I'm sounding like I didn't like the film, which I did.
Sure.
But I'm trying to think of Dave Grusin's other scores at the moment. He's got Academy Awards and everything.
No, quite a lot. But he was pretty much on. He was more firmly on the jazz side consistently than say Alex North and Herman. But he was a jazz.
Yeah,
and
3 Days of the Condor. That was a good one. I remember liking that score. This is the thing about you composers. You're so prolific. It's difficult to keep up. There are so many,
Yeah, and I think Dave Grusin's, happened in a relatively short space of time. So it's kind of like he was, he was there, and he was everywhere, and then he was gone.
Right. Okay. Well, this is his music. His On Golden Pond, Henry Fonda and Katharine Hepburn, wasn't it? Oh, yeah. It's great. It is great and very. Would it be wrong to say it's a bit very 80s? Would that be incorrect? I think there were a lot of scores like that
Yeah,
in the
no,
80s.
I think that's right. That sort of orchestral jazz. Yes,
Hmm.
that's right. You know, if you like, if you can describe it like that.
Yeah.
But it's great. Yeah, I could do with a little less wildlife on that personally.
Well,
But
it's in the film, isn't it?
the
It's the she mentions about. Is it the lupins? I'm not a bird watcher myself, but I think it's the lupins when they return to the pond. That's what it is.
they're quite loud.
Yeah, they are. How they got them in the studio, I'll never know. So
Anyway, great stuff. I like it.
yeah, no, that's lovely. It is lovely. It is. So Mr. Turner next, which is I love the score. I love the score. And now because you were involved with this one, weren't you?
I did. I conducted it, yeah, and just I've done all the Mike Lee stuff for a few years as conductor, with the composer Gary Gershon. So that's become kind of regular in the diary. I think the current one is very firmly on ice. I think.
Is it? Well, everything's on ice, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think this is a particularly good one. I think for me as a fan, I really like this one. And it has it's kind of sort of sad, isn't it? Was that deliberate?
It's got a sadness to it, doesn't it? And it's the kind of pulling, and it's sort of really kind of pulsating and moving around the standards. It was not what you expect. It's totally the wrong era. But I think it really kind of just goes straight to the emotion. They're like whales, you know.
Yes.
WAIL, and the saxes, and I just think it kind of really works at a human level. And the fact that it's incorrect historically, I think
I think that's fine. What I was trying to articulate in my own inept way was that it feels like it's reaching for something that it can't quite achieve. Not the score, because it achieves it, but the feel of the music it's reaching out in some way.
That's right. It never lands. It's true.
Mm. And it's years ago in Amdram, I was in a Tom Stoppard play called The Real Inspector Hound, which is tremendous fun to do. But there's a funny line in it which has always stuck with me. When the second act opens, one of the critics says, "Well, what's happening?" And he says, "Well, it's a pause." He said, "What do you mean it's a pause? You can't open a play with a pause." And the first time I saw Mr. Turner, that was what struck me. He opens this film with a pause because it starts, doesn't it, with those two figures walking along the side of the canal.
Yeah.
And that's what Lee has done. He started a film with a pause.
Yeah. And it's minutes. It's sort of 3 minutes or something.
It's
crazy,
quite something. And just gorgeous stuff. This is
and this music, I think, is this the start of the film?
This is Mr. Turner. I assume it's the start of the film.
I think it is. I think you hear these high saxes and nothing else.
That's it. Yeah. So to start a film with a pause, which is I'm gonna torture that analogy forever. Hold on. So, what have we got next? This is a long one. So, this
We're going
is
to pay 12 minutes of this.
12 minutes of just after. So, why is it called? It's called Just brackets After Song of Songs close brackets.
Yeah, it's
by David Lang.
David Lang, yeah. This is Sorrentino's youth, and which was very joyous to work on. I have to say, it was really, really lovely. I love the great beauty and
I love that,
of Sorrentino, and I was around a lot. I had to teach Michael Caine to conduct, believe it or not.
Oh wow!
He plays a conductor in this story, if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
And it's all around this piece, quite an involved piece with some fairly starry performers that we had actually.
You did.
But Michael Caine is there at the end, at the climax of the film. He has to conduct this concert of his piece, and he had to look convincing. So I spent quite a long time with him, actually, a lot of time with him. So that was very pleasant. And the Sorrentino I really liked. And he had this Italian crew, and they were all good fun. And it was one of those jobs you didn't really quite want to finish. So I quite enjoyed it. But most of all, I think David Lang he's a concert composer who doesn't do movies per se, and he's a very, very interesting guy, and he's very much his own man. And so I always find his music very approachable, but very idiosyncratic and very tasteful. So
yes.
I don't know. Did you like this piece?
I did. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's. I was curious about the sequence itself, where he conducts the orchestra. Where was that shot?
It was that theatre in Wimbledon.
Oh right, so it was shot in London. It wasn't in some lovely place in Italy or.
No, I don't know why they shot it all here. Probably because of Michael Caine to some extent.
Right.
But no, that all happened here. But it was a very, very happy little period.
Yeah.
Just your mouth, just your love, just your anointing oils, just your name, just your chambers, just your love, and my mother's sons, and my own vineyard, and my soul, just your flock, just your companions, just your kids, just your cheeks, just your neck, just your couch, and my perfume, and my beloved, and my breasts, and my beloved, and my love, just your eyes, and my beloved. And my love, and my beloved, just your shadow, just your fruit, just your banner over me, just your left hand, just your right hand, and my beloved, and my beloved. And my beloved, and my love, your voice, just your voice, just your face. Are in yours. And my beloved, just your flunk. And my beloved, and my bed, and my soul, and my soul, and my soul, and my soul, and my mother's house, just your sword, just your mother, just your wedding, just your heart, and my love, just your eyes, just your veil.
We're not doing too badly here. So we got 3 to go, and this is music from Nocturnal Animals. Yeah. Abel, how do we say this? Sorry, I'm really bad at this.
I know this because I had to learn to say it.
Right.
Abel Korzeniowski.
Oh, right.
Abel Korzeniowski. I can confidently tell you that's correct.
The number of times I get caught out when I've been doing some radio and I put this music in and I go, and I trip. It's terrible English affliction, isn't it? We can't pronounce other things other than Marmite and HP sauce.
Oh well, yeah. How do you? But it does look a bit weird on the page. But it is. I had to practice it because I did a film with him called W.E. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What a long time ago now. It was the Madonna
Yeah.
movie about Wallis Simpson.
Yeah. How did that go?
Sorry.
How did that go?
In which sense?
Well, it wasn't a big hit, was it?
It wasn't a big hit. No, and no, it wasn't a. It's fine. I didn't particularly enjoy the experience. I quite enjoyed Abel, and I liked his composing, and that kind of interested me. And we did a few things together.
Yeah, and so this music from Nocturnal Animals, which is an interesting film. I mean, it was Tom Ford, wasn't it?
Do you know what? When we did this, I did that list and sort of thought, well, I don't know what to put on this list, and then I thought, oh yeah, Nocturnal Animals, and then I thought, do you know what? I might just watch that again. So I watched it.
Oh, you did?
Last night. And it's an even better film than I remember.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Just beautiful. Scary at the same time, but it's also every single frame is you could put a frame around it, and put it on the wall. Just beautiful.
The thing I remember most about it is the very opening. I mean, I haven't seen it for a while, but it had all those people, didn't it? There's very overweight people dancing up and down. That's Nocturnal Animals, isn't it?
That's the opening credits. Yes.
Flesh, real flesh.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, completely uncompromising.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is a track from Nocturnal Animals, directed by Tom Ford, and it's called The Field. think in this series of podcasts, what is going to become a theme is, because everybody so far has picked it, is Johan Johansson's score from Arrival.
Oh, right.
Now, I think it must be. It's going to become a landmark, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece of work. It's just wonderful, really. It's very inventive and totally in tune with the film. It's beautiful at times, and disturbing at the same time, but somehow very human. I think it's a really fine score.
It's terrifying, I think. It's absolutely terrifying in places. Because now I'm delivering burgers for a living, and I drive around listening to film music, and this one comes on. It's suddenly Manor Park Estate in Uckfield looks really menacing. But so
the other thing that Johansson, I just
Yes.
made this made this link in my head like just now, is that he has that Morricone thing of just the smallest correct gesture and making it last, and it does its job very effectively.
it's a bit 2001 as well there, isn't there? A bit of Ligeti, is that how you pronounce it?
Ligeti, yeah.
Ligeti.
Yeah. But yes, it is in some ways it is, yes.
Ligeti, is that how you say it?
Ligeti, that's how I say it. Ligeti, yeah, I think so.
As a fairly, I wouldn't say lonely child, but as a child who was the only person I knew that had any interest in this stuff whatsoever, I would read words, and that's how I would have them in my head. It was only as an adult coming across other people and I would say them out loud and realise I've been producing it wrong in my head for 30 years.
That's all right. That's allowed. How could you know?
I know. How could you know, actually? But I think that may. I mean, 2001 is an influence on pretty much anything, isn't it? These days, everybody. But yeah, it is extraordinary. So, which brings us to the last one, and one of my absolute favourites of recent times, Johnny Greenwood's score for.
That's good. Yeah, okay, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. So the music for The Phantom Thread by Johnny Greenwood. He's really shown himself to be a great composer, hasn't he, for film scores?
Terrific, isn't it? Really, really lovely out of nowhere. It's great.
And a totally thrilling score as well. I mean, I find it genuinely thrilling, even when it's being beautiful. It's actually thrilling, particularly this track, The House of Woodcock. It has a kind of I wouldn't say it's not breathless exactly. That would be the wrong word, but it yeah. And what a film! I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Did you like the film?
Good.
We were asking, actually. We were trying to work out, and I'm not sure if this is in the second part of Phil and I's discussion, whether or not we and it's maybe a question I ask everybody in the end, is it possible for you to love a film but hate the score?
Yes.
You know, because we generally might like, it's very possible to love the score but not like the film. But is it the other way round possible?
Speaking personally, I would emphatically say yes.
Right. Okay. Because I couldn't think of any examples, and I wouldn't expect you to certainly come up with any contemporary ones. But you know,
well, if I would upset a lot of
that's what, of course,
90% of the people if I told you what my opinion is. But there are some big films with
terrible
atrocious scores, in my opinion, and there always have been.
Okay.
What was it?
Yeah, no, I don't want to put you in a compromising
there's I can't remember which of one of the really big Hollywood composers. I'm just trying to think who it was. Had a quote which I always loved, which was, "No great score ever saved a bad movie, but there are loads of great movies that saved some awful scores."
Yeah, I think that's probably absolutely right. Yeah, but because if you love I just wonder, if you love a film, do you love everything about it? You know, and that's probably not true, is it? The more sophisticated part of you should understand that there are bits of that film that you love that maybe aren't quite so good.
I think so. And also professionally, you just have to stand back and just say, actually, that's bloody awful.
But you don't know why it's awful, do you? I mean, there could have been all sorts of pressures that...
Oh, no, the reason for it being awful. Like No Time, for example.
Yeah,
yes,
No Time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can actually say that music is pretty crappy.
But the other question, actually, then the sort of last question I'll ask you then in this regard is, one of the things that we've been talking about is noticing the music in a film. Now, I notice it because I'm a big film music fan. But are you of the opinion that it should be transparent to the experience of the film, or that you should sit there thinking, well, no, that's a lovely bit of music right there, rather than noticing that the villain is about to kill the heroine?
Yeah, there's no kind of. I mean, both are true. I think, Evans. There are times when you don't want to. You just suddenly aware that there's something going on in the background, and just with one's professional ear, and just saying, oh yeah, the music. When did that arrive? And that was good. And other times when you really like Morricone, where you wouldn't want to. There's no excuse. It doesn't excuse itself. It's there because it needs to be there. And
yes.
For example, and any number of other examples. So it's case specific, I think.
I guess that's a great answer, because you couldn't imagine that last sequence of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I think it is, isn't it? With the three of them facing off across the circular thing, and the music gets louder and louder and louder until it reaches this kind of screaming pitch almost, doesn't it? And that is music fully drawing attention to itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just part of an art form, isn't it? So it's just one of your weapons.
It is.